Hello and welcome to another episode, a very special, very new episode of My Dinner with Gabe. I'm Gabe Van Handel, and I've got a special new co-host in today. Xavier LaPlay is out of the building, so I have my very good and dear friend, Robert Lang.
Hi there.
That's Robert Lang. He's going to be my co-host today, so we're going to see how things go. It's going to be tight. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be baller. So let's start off with the sweet and cute little segment that we call Box Office and Movie News. Again, we're going to do this like how I used to do this. Box Office News with Gabe Van Handel. Get your pillows out. Opening this week, number one, Hotel Transylvania with $42 million. Pretty strong opening. The strongest opening for an October film. I'm sorry. Yes, the strongest September opening ever. Strongest September opening ever.
It's kind of surprising for something that's less than 50% over on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, I mean, it's, just kid fare. Adam Sandler's in it. Families went to go see it. It's kind of Halloween-y, not something so dorky, but...
Adam Sandler's in it?
Adam Sandler does one of the voices. Oh. Yeah. Looper opened second with a modest $20.8 for the $30 million budgeted film. Pretty strong stuff. End of Watch was third with 7.8. In its 2-week run, it's gained $25 million. Trouble with the Curve was fourth with 7. House at the End of the Street dropped to number 5 with 7.1, only accumulating $22 million. Still doing decent numbers for a very small budgeted horror film from Relativity Media. Already making back more of that $10 million budget. Pitch Perfect in limited release did extremely well with $5.1 million in only 335 locations with a per screen average of $15,000. So $15,000 on average per site that it was made on. That's very strong, which is even more money than was acquired for the movie in first place, Hotel Transylvania, which had $12,000 per site. So at each theater location, it made $12,000.
Thank you, X Factor.
Yeah. So this movie made $5 million altogether this weekend, already making a dent in its small $17 million budget. Seventh was Finding Nemo 3D. With $4.0 million. Resident Evil Retribution was 8th with $2.9 million.
You're going to keep making them if you keep watching them.
I don't think that's going to happen because this one has so far, it had the second worst opening of any of the films in the series.
It's because they keep putting more clothes on Mila Kunis.
That's true. And she doesn't get any hotter as she gets older. She just gets more angry and less emotion-y. The Master was 9th with $2.6 million, dropping down fast at the charts, moving along and living it up with that pre-screening hype. And now that people have seen the film and that it's...
All I've heard is it's very difficult to watch.
It's extremely difficult to watch. I reviewed it last week on the show. It's beautiful and it's poignant, but Zav and I couldn't figure out what the hell we thought of it.
Well, maybe Joaquin needed a beard.
Yeah. Maybe he needed rap.
I actually heard he did really, really well.
He's amazing. He's amazing in the film, but the film just can't figure out what the hell is going on. It's great, though. It's another P.T. Anderson gem. Won't Back Down was 10th with 2.6. I've got some words about that movie. And that also had the worst opening for any film in over 2,500 locations with 2.6 million. I'll get to that. Hotel Transylvania set a new September record opening with $42.5 million, which beats out the previous record of Sweet Home Alabama's $35.6 million many, many years ago.
That's a pretty low-hanging fruit, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's not it's not terrible. It's not like a $70 million clincher or something.
Not to mention you're doing a kid horror film in October, so...
Yeah, it's true. It's not like a giant feat. A record for Sony Pictures animation debut, which is ahead of The Smurfs and a Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which Sony Pictures, also known as Columbia Pictures Animation, is trying to move ahead and try to compete in the market with the also new Universal Animation Studio, and with 20th Century occasionally putting out an animated fare, but just every studio wanting to be able to give a fighting chance against Walt Disney and the powers that be over at Pixar. Second best debut for a Sandler film ever. While Sandler's last two films bombed hard, Jack and Jill and That's My Boy, one could say that the Sandler brand is alive and well. Many were wondering and weary with the name after those two films just succumbed to darkness. With Hotel's blend of slapstick, mild rude humor, silliness, and just general jokiness all around, appears as though Sandler's name maybe has not lost clout with families yet.
What's the studio for Hotel Transylvania?
That's Sony Pictures Animation, so it's like Columbia.
Okay.
It's the Columbia Pictures end of animation. Looper, good, not great opening, and forces the challenges of selling original R-rated, high-minded adult science fiction material, even with previews positively reinforcing the film's unique premise, high-profile cast members, and even with highly positive reviews and strong buzz on social media. It just shows how difficult it is to get key older male demographic to rush out on an opening weekend for something new that is not a sequel or a remake or something lazy.
Yeah, but this one's I think it's just gonna be a slow burn. It's gonna take a little while. So. Everybody who I know who has seen it, which I have not yet, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt is awesome, and he's
absolutely
just only gonna get better. So this is the kind of stuff that it's gonna be in the theaters probably for another couple months, and if not, then it's gonna be in the bargain cinemas for another, just raking up the dollars.
And this is a modestly budgeted film too. It's only $30 million, budgeted $30 million. It opened to 20. So this is a success story already, and this is destined to become a cult favorite among R-rated science fiction fare, a thinking person's action film.
Which has been a while for Bruce Willis.
Absolutely, he's been releasing about a movie a month on average for a while, and all of them have either bombed or just been bad. And he has a new Die Hard film coming out soon. I think it's called A Good Day to Die Hard.
Was that number 9?
Yeah, this time he's looking up. He's looking at canes and walkers, and then the funeral home gets hit by a bunch of terrorists and a bunch of hostages.
I think they're running out of terrorist groups.
Oh God. Yeah, the last one just used every resource in every city. I feel like that film was just shot in every city in America and used every possible means of, like, semi-trucks getting chased by airplanes, trains getting chased by cars. I mean, just
wasn't that called Jumper?
It was Pitch Perfect actually had an incredible 15,000 per theater average opening, and is going to expand this Friday with strong female word of mouth behind it. This film looks obnoxious, and it looks just beyond a redundant rehash of everything Glee World included. But apparently it's actually cute, it's endearing. I will not be seeing this, but if this is something
you're also not a 17-year-old high school girl.
No, but I feel like one. I dress like one sometimes, alone in my closet. Won't Back Down was the worst opening ever for a movie in 2,500 plus locations, 2,500 theaters with 2.6 million. Previous record holder was held by The Rocker. So this is a movie that shows that maybe telling people what they should think about teachers' unions isn't the way to go.
That's Miss Gyllenhaal, right?
And Gyllenhaal preaching about with the post-Waiting for Superman era of screaming at teachers' unions that they should be working for less pay, and
that's pretty rough.
That they should be putting the children in the education first, even though they're
maybe they should have released it only in the blue states.
I think you're right. I think it would have. But I think 20th Century Fox seems to know that they had a stinker on their hand here, because there's very little advertising done for this except for in print publications, and
Hulu had a trailer.
That's true. Hulu
Had one trailer.
and that kind of marketing is so cheap, though. Like the online advertising, because you only have to do it for a couple of days, and then you just put it in a place where everyone's going to see it, and that's actually a lot less expensive than putting an ad in the New York Times, a full page ad, and that's less expensive than running ads on TV stations across the country, like on Channel 8, like on local CW affiliates.
Oh yeah, that was
on
not
Fox
on
affiliates.
any TV.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that
It wasn't even in any of the indie films that I've seen in the last
theaters.
couple
Yeah,
months.
it wasn't anywhere. So I guess this wasn't a huge shockaroo for them. So that's box office news. Now we got upcoming release news, which Robert and I are going to share duties with. And there's 3 films that are coming out: Taken 2, Frankenweenie, and Pitch Perfect.
May I first say that I hate the title of Taken 2. Like, it's just confusing. It's like Taken Again or Taken Also. I take it. It's just
a sequel to this film about someone that was taken. Okay.
more Taken.
More takenness. we're having more taking. Yeah. Maybe they should have just called this one Taking.
Taking.
Like the
Took.
Yeah.
Done got took.
If you took my daughter, I guarantee I'm gonna find you and have these wolves tear you off. That's wrong film.
I feel horrible, but I mean, I didn't see the first one because I'm not much for like spy.
It's actually
thriller stuff.
It's actually a pretty entertaining, engaging film where a bunch of Albanians get torn to shit by Liam Neeson. It's actually one of my favorite action films of the last like 5 years or so. It's not terrible, Robert. I have to say this. It's like really good PG-13 fodder for men and women.
I'm guessing I'm watching Born Legacy, where it's the daughter instead of a memory that the guy's going after. But and like I said, I didn't see it, but
it's not a huge stretch of the imagination to figure out what happens in that film. It really isn't.
Well, and if he's supposed to be a master spy, how does he lose something again?
Well, because because it's like it's while they're not in his custody, and then he finds them within a day. Like his daughter is going to Europe, and she gets kidnapped while in Europe, and then
he needs to get a bodyguard. That's what he needs to get.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to be this loving and trusting father who let his daughter go to Europe, and then
Nerp.
Well, and then he finds her within a day, does a voice trace on the killers based on the cell phone call. They figure out where in Bosnia the dialect is from based on like a 2-second clip of the guy talking based on the dialect. He's from a northern region. It's a small town in Bosnia.
So it's like CSI.
It's similar to that. And then he just shows up and starts killing people.
Oh.
There's a scene where he kills like 15 Albanians in like 2 minutes. And this film, a lot of the reviews I've been reading are that it just reinforces the whole love of killing Albanians. And
Has the Albanian government made a statement on this? Because they probably should.
I think they're happy that they're getting any publicity, to be honest, besides Amir Costa Rica making films once in a while. So let's read our synopses, which is weird because on Rotten Tomatoes, the synopsis is actually that of the first movie. So I'll give a quick synopsis. And that...
What we're doing, Taken 2?
We're doing Taken 2. Shit.
Taken to Paradise. Taken to the boathouse.
I'm just looking up the information on the first one. So, Liam Neeson plays a character who loses his daughter. In this one, it's his ex-wife. And she gets kidnapped by terrorists who are upset about the Albanians that he killed in the first Taken film. And, it goes from there that he eventually has to just utilize his skills to kill these people and take her back.
Is he an American?
Yes, he's a retired American spy in these movies, and I'm having some internet problems here. Oh shit!
What are you reading from? The movie info? I can read that for you.
Yeah, and then
Because it says Taken. This is the one. Isn't this the wrong one?
it's the wrong one,
It
but
says
it's
Taken.
fine.
Former government agent Brian Mills has retired and attempts to reassemble his old life. After years of overseas employment have left him estranged from his teenage daughter. Oh, sorry, I said that with the wrong inflection. But when she is kidnapped while in Europe, Brian must revert to his old set of skills to rescue her before she disappears forever. So they actually have the synopsis for the first movie.
Which is odd, but that's pretty much the synopsis for the second one too, from what I've been hearing. And that movie got a 17%.
So all I have to do is write again after that, and then it's Taken 2.
Taken 2 again. And then if you want to read the synopses of what the critics said at the top.
So lazily put together that it relies on flashbacks from its predecessor for the majority of its character development. Dana Stevens from The Slate.
Yep.
That was pretty brutal.
So but generally what I've been reading about Taken 2 is that it's formulaic, predictable, clumsy, outlandish, laughable where the original was sleek, tough, and efficient, smart looking, but stupid feeling.
There's a couple, there's one good one from San Francisco Chronicle. It says, as much as this picture is action-driven, its greatest delights are grounded in personality, in the fun of having a protagonist who combines homespun volumes with velociraptor functionality. That doesn't make any sense. The only other one that is a good rating says, a good, solid B-level entertainment, which I'm sure is what they were going for.
Yep, I would agree. This movie got like a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes.
19 actually.
19 now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad. That's actually like a 1. That's on average about a 1 or a low 1.5 star.
You add the 2
rating.
to the name, and it's 3 more percent.
It's true. So, moving on. Frankenweenie. Synopsis.
Let's see. Frankenweenie. This is Tim Burton, right?
This is a remake of the first film that he directed, which was a half-an-hour short, which premiered at the beginning of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, really?
Yep. Which was his first feature-length film.
Is Johnny Depp in it?
I doubt it, but I'm sure he'll make a cameo or something.
All right. From creative genius Tim Burton comes Frankenweenie, a heartwarming tale about a boy and his dog. After unexpectedly losing his beloved dog Sparky, young Victor harnesses the power of science to bring his best friend back to life with just a few minor adjustments. He tries to hide his home-sewn creation, but when Sparky gets out, Victor's fellow students, teachers, and entire town all learn that getting a new leash on life, in quotes, can be monstrous. Sorry, that's funny.
It's okay.
A stop-motion animated film, Frankenweenie, will be filmed in black and white and rendered in 3D, which will elevate the classic style to a whole new experience. Copyright Disney.
So, what I've been hearing is it's alive with heart, inventive horror films of late, a very old loving tribute. It's slightly annoying in its barrage of cinephile references, and it's not quite scary and not quite hilarious, but many say very good. If you have a couple of quotes, Robert.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. We have
maybe some
critic reviews. Let's see. The stop-motion animation, a favorite tool of Burton's, is given loving attention, and the character design is full of terrific touches, such as a hulking, flat-topped schoolmate who looks a little bit like a certain man-made monster. All right. This 3D black and white family comedy is the year's most inventive, endearing animated feature. It comes from Time. And let's see. The most Tim Burton-y of director's films, and not just because it contains a vast catalog of references to his own movies. Everything from Edward Scissorhands to the underrated 1989 Batman. So he's apparently making a lot of references to his own movies in his own movie.
And references to his own movies, and what I've been hearing is a lot of references just to old horror films in general, like a lot of the old Hammer films, the Christopher Lee films, the Peter Cushing films, and a lot of older, like Universal age horror films.
There's a couple of reviews on here where they're saying it's not quite as innovative or clear as Paranorman.
Yeah, that's actually what I've been hearing too, but which is a similar stop motion animated film, PG, sort of terrifying about the sort of gross out creature effects and stop motion and
Well,
stuff
they
like
share
that.
the kitschy names.
Yep. Paranorman, I actually really want to see. Even though this film's been getting better reviews, I'm much more interested in Paranorman.
I think it's just because of the Tim Burton name, though.
Yeah. And Pitch Perfect, which looks like an
really wanna read this one.
obnoxious film. Go ahead, take it away, Robert Lang.
I just read this one. Let's see. Nope. Yeah. So a bunch of high school kids form a glee group. Nope, sorry. Becca is that girl who would rather listen to what's coming out of her headphones than what's coming out of you. Arriving at her new college, she finds herself not right for any clique, but somehow is muscled into one that she never would have picked on her own, alongside with mean girls, sweet girls, and weird girls, whose only thing in common is how good they sound when they sing together. In this new out loud comedy, really? Pitch Perfect, when Becca takes this acoustic singing group out of their world of traditional arrangements and perfect harmonies into all new mashups, they fight to climb their way to the top of a cutthroat world of college a cappella. This could wind up either the coolest thing they'll ever do or the most insane, and it will probably be a little of both.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great synopsis right there.
So here's what we got. We got a 75%er with that. It's actually gotten some good reviews. A lot of them sort of offhandedly trying to defend the film, saying, well, this isn't smart fare, this isn't brilliant fare, but it's not pretending to be.
Yeah, but is this our generation's Clueless? I mean, even Clueless was better than this.
Well, Clueless was kind of a tongue-in-cheek film. Was a pretty Clueless sounds like it was more self-aware and more knowing and more sort of like socially satirical. This just sounds stupid.
Well,
to me.
Trying to think of something to reference this to.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on, except Bring It On sounds more like knowingly sarcastic and more satirical at the same time. So what I've been hearing, what I've been reading, let's put on a show, Hollywood-style story. Kind of embarrassing, but fun comes from it not really caring or taking itself seriously. I'm not going to see this. I'm sorry.
Recycled as it is from the spare parts of fun fluff like Bring It On, Pitch Perfect understands its own fizzy pop irrelevance and wisely puts emphasis on getting laughs.
So
all right.
So if you like Miscongeniality and Reese Witherspoon comedies,
yeah,
this is your movie.
Go for it, man.
Legally Blonde 2, stuff like that.
There's got to be a drinking game in this that would make an entertainment.
Yes. So
every time somebody says, "Oh no, you didn't."
Oh no,
drink.
you did. Or every time a white person does an absurd black gesture, does something in the vein of trying to figure out how her black counterpart, how she can relate to her black counterpart, you have to take a drink every time the.
You know this is going to spawn like a couple careers too, though.
Well, and it's going to spawn about 7 direct-to-DVD sequels. Great.
And another season of Glee.
So, that is our review on that. I've got one new film to review that I saw on DVD. I've watched a number of films, but I was trying to play catch-up because this week on our show we're doing a large tribute to Hideo Miyazaki, who directed many films under Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, technically it's Ghibli is when you call the wind, but Japanese or Ghibli is wind.
Ghibli.
Yeah, but the Japanese don't have a hard G, according to Wikipedia.
Ghibli. So Studio Ghibli, which is spelled Ghibli, which Disney Films has recently been releasing their films under for about.
Yeah, they have all the rights for the U.S.
All the rights for the U.S. Formerly, Miramax Films was releasing their films until they got bought out under Disney. Well, they actually always were bought out, owned by Disney, but since Miramax Films is no more any longer, Disney now is the proper distributor of all their films. In the late 90s, Miramax brought Princess Mononoke to the States and tried to distribute that as a sort of as a smaller animated blockbuster, and it didn't really work. They cut so much of the film out, and they butchered it into this sort of cute PG-13 version, when the original film was actually quite obscene and had a lot of gore and.
It's definitely not a kids' film.
It's not a kids' film. It's an adult film, and they tried to tone it down for a PG-13 audience. Ghibli was not happy about that, and also Spirited Away was chopped down from its original form when that was released by Disney, and which is a kids' film, but after Spirited Away won the Oscar for Best Animated Film, Richard Lasseter, who's directed a numerous amount of the recent Disney films of late. He's one of the brains behind the Toy Story films and behind Cars and many of those other films. Right next side to Brad Bird is a creative genius at Pixar. He has convinced Disney to release a lot of these films on DVD and in special packages, and to remaster them. Films like Castle in the Sky, Nausicaa, and Porco Rosso, which were previously under smaller labels, under like Image Entertainment DVD, which you had to find them. Now they're given the 2-disc special packaging that they deserve. So we're going to get to that in 1 second. First, I'm going to review Headhunters, which is a Scandinavian film. It's Norwegian, actually. And it's a recent release on Magnolia Entertainment. It's a film about a man who's a headhunter for a business corporation that does large-scale corporate, some sort of manufacturing. It's never really defined what it is exactly that they do. Other than that, it seems to be a company that sort of handles other companies' mergers. It seems to handle other companies' interactions with each other, some sort of a financial institution. There's a main character who is not really likable. He's sort of somewhat approachable. He's understandable, and he's watchable. He's sort of entertaining in this clownish kind of way, but he is morally repugnant. He's kind of morally repulsive in a lot of ways. And you just see him make one bad decision after another, and one morally repugnant decision after another, but he does it in the name of trying to clear things up, trying to do the right thing eventually, but having to clean up the mess that he's already made. And it's the fact that he knows his wife, that he doesn't really have a clear cut, he doesn't have a good relationship with anyone, he doesn't have any honesty in his life. So to build this life of appearance that he's built up for himself, of money for his wife, of a nice house for his wife, of nice cars and jewelry for everything, which he feels that making his wife happy will vicariously make him happy in some ways by having beauty and by having all this sort of superficiality. He's also an art thief on the side. He steals and collects very, very luxurious, prestigious works of art. The film becomes darkly funny as he just gets deeper and deeper into shit that he can't get himself out of. There's just so much monetary excess. There's morally empty, appearance-based relationships that are just building up and building up in their hollowness. Mostly, this is a film that shows the world, the competitive business world, not just the business world in the United States. It shows a fiercely selfish and a fiercely corrupt world of suits and of slick back hair and of corporate mergers. Great filmmaking, squirmy lead who is understandable, watchable, but not really worthy of sympathy, which makes for an interesting film, actually. It's a matter-of-fact, very unstylized and straightforward crime film. I was very entertained by it. I liked it a lot. Lack of explosions is always welcome for me in corporate espionage thrillers. So, back to Studio Ghibli. I'm going to run a clip from the most recent of the studio's films that actually premiered pretty well at the box office. Opened 7th about 6 months ago, and that's The Secret World of Arrietty.
Have to let me come borrowing tonight.
Ugh. We know nothing about this new bean.
But you promised this would be my night. And I've seen him. Papa, please, I am telling you, he's just a child.
And the children are more vicious than the grown-ups.
I'll be fine.
Well, the young beans do go to bed early.
What that clip, just that audio clip showcases is this is an animated film. The amount of depth in the audio and in the recording and in the presentation of it, the sound effects of them opening a jar, of them breathing, of them sitting down, moving of the tables, the whispering, the enunciation of their words, the excitement, the fear, the longing, and the exasperation of being a young girl. It's a lot of the craftsmanship that I find that goes into these films that just create a really beautiful, really ethereal world that makes it a full picture of filmmaking. And I think that clip really illustrates it with the diversity of characters and always a strong plot. But there's a lot of elements that are usually very unusual. Zav and I reviewed this on the show several weeks ago, and we were both taken by this film for different reasons. But I was mostly blown away by one of the various things that are very recurrent in his work, which are style-wise. There's always a lot of human-like movement, very realistic. Much of the colors and much of the artwork is always done by watercolors. Secret World of Arietti, along with all the other films I've done, always have these very impressionistic, very gorgeous backgrounds, like almost like Monet paintings, lush and beautiful. Tries to incorporate as little CG or computer animation as possible, and in fact, Princess Mononoke was the first to do so in 1997. Now, Robert, I was wondering if you'd like to maybe talk a little bit about some of the recurring themes in these movies, or the impressions that you get out of it, because on a technical level, recurring themes that seem to be in his movies are environmentalism, pacifism, feminism. Weirdly enough, there seems to be an absence of villains in some of his films.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you took just Princess Mononoke, I was thinking about earlier, is nobody's a villain in that movie. Like, the most selfish person is the government agent that's looking to get the head for the emperor, and even then he gives up. Like, he's not a vicious person. It's always, there's no villains. There's just people that are misunderstood, and I would say, like, all of those are wrapped in these odd coming-of-age stories. Like, almost every single one of them is a coming-of-age story in some respect. I mean, Spirited Away is the most blatant, but even Princess Mononoke is a prince coming of age. Howl's Moving Castle, Kiki's Delivery Service, they're all Ponyo. They're all, like, people, children type people getting way more in the muck than they can deal with. And to a certain extent, sometimes they're children's movies, sometimes they're not children's movies. Like we said, Princess Mononoke is not a children's movie. It's a straight up, I don't know, environmentalist movie. And even like you said, there's no villains. The madam that has the ore mining, she's not inherently a bad person. She's just trying to eke out a living, and unfortunately making some poor choices, but going for her own, I guess.
No more than any of the leading protagonists do as well, which is what I think it lends a lot of humanity to these films.
Right. I mean, as far as the protagonists go, like, I mean, Princess Mononoke, the prince is probably the only one that is pretty straightforward, a good person. But even Mononoke herself is not, like, she's, headstrong and kind of obviously biased about how she feels about things. And, yeah, I mean, Spirited Away doesn't, the young child in that, she really does no wrong either. Even the innkeeper, who's kind of a pill at first, is you're warmed up to later on. They definitely don't take any hard stance on, like, creating sides in the story, but just, like, working through a story by, complexity and stuff like that. And I don't know. It's there's a number of reviews I read about some of the Ghibli's movies that I haven't seen for a while, and I didn't need to go rewatch them when I was reading the plot synopsis. I was like, oh yeah, so and so special, taken out of their environment, needs to go do a hero's quest of some sort, and then all is right in the world again, ish. So
there's a lot of this sort of somewhat traditional Japanese themes, and in some ways very untraditional Japanese themes, because some of this traditional stuff of needing to go on a quest to prove oneself or to sort of remain honorable to one's clan or remain honorable to one's family is very much... Sorry, I'm having my dinner of nicotine gum, my dinner with Gabe. But to stay honorable to oneself, to one's place in life, and there's a lot of this Shintoist sort of ideology of being true, but there's also a revisionist take of women coming into the forelight, and women sort of taking a stand where in some cases men can't, won't, or don't.
Well, there's a lot of strong female protagonists in almost every single one of his films. If they're not the main character, they are a very, very important tertiary character.
Usually, and like you said, a young coming-of-age female, like a female teenage character. Usually with some sort of a strong anti-war message, usually put into place and really enunciated by the female character, sort of bringing other people back to their senses in some ways.
Well, you see that in Nausicaa, you see that in Howl's Moving Castle, the whole imbalance part in Ponyo to a certain extent. I mean, it's not exactly a war, but it is a conflict.
It's an imbalance. It's a great imbalance. And because I think these aren't so far-fetched of stories, these are fantasy stories, but they're believable fantasy stories. They make you enchanted with the idea of magic. And at least with me, they make it seem as though like a world like this isn't so far off because he humanizes it so well.
Well, a lot of that believability comes from, I mean, especially with the American releases, the voice actors that they get. Because you can watch them in subtitles and they are quite wonderful. But out of any studio that puts up top dollar for getting good voice actors, they don't skimp on that. They
don't. Castle in the Sky, even from 1986, is one of the best voice acting productions I've ever heard. And they redid that in 2006, I believe, 2006 or 2007, when Disney started re-releasing all those old Studio Ghibli films. Castle in the Sky, Nausicaa, and Porco Rosso were all given the supreme treatment, and those were three of the lesser treated or adorned or released in the States.
I want to say. From Princess Mononoke on out, they just never skimped on it in the U.S. They got grade A, if not grade legacy actors. Like
and sound team too, and just sound production. I mean, like I was saying, like the entire soundtrack is redone in the States in terms of like just the footsteps, the walking, the breathing. Will Arnett, I think, gave one of the best performances in Secret World of Arrietty. He's just very he doesn't say much. He literally just goes, but you feel like he's right there because he embodies the character so well, and the emotions and the visual tics come across so well with the acting and with the sound of rain in that movie, because it's about little 4-inch tall people, and the use of soundtrack to capture the rain falling or the sound of leaves and the sound of like the seasons changing. I mean, it's just poetic. I was brought to tears several times during that film for so many, not just like the poetry of the story, but just the grace of the filmmaking. But you were asking me about.
I was gonna say my favorite voice actor by far is the old witch in Howl's Moving Castle. Who played it? It was God. She's a ridiculously esteemed actress, and should be probably shot for forgetting her name. And I'm gonna look
Maggie.
It up.
Maggie Harry Potter. I was trying to remember the name of several of these old dames yesterday, and I was getting pretty irritated with myself that I couldn't. I was like, Judy. Judy Blue Eyes, Judy Cuticle, M, she plays M, and Judi Dench, yes, Judi Dench. And I still never looked up what
Lauren Bacall.
Lauren Bacall, that's right.
She plays it's such a fun
She's
character.
got that smoky, sort of very pronounced voice.
She's an antagonist that just completely turned a 180, and the voice acting is outstanding. Her losing her relevance, and it's one of my favorite characters out of any of their films, because most of Ghibli's characters are pretty one-sided, with the exception of the protagonist. They go through their transformation and they become adults. But she is one of these tertiary characters that you don't find in a lot of his films, that plays one role for the first half, and then the second half is a completely different role. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, and just from the bat, seeing that movie and then recognizing her voice, I already knew that was going to be awesome.
Beautiful. What's your personal favorite, Robert?
My personal favorite is definitely Mononoke by far. But I saw that when I was 17, and I was definitely in a generation where environmentalism wasn't an option, and and that's there were so many plots going on at the same time, and it leaves pretty unresolved at the end. I mean, they restore it, everything's right in the world, but all these mythical guardians of the forest are now gone. And I just remember that hitting me pretty hard when I was like,
it's a dark film.
16.
Yeah,
no,
it
it's
ends
really dark.
It ends really like you said, like sort of ambiguously.
It's unlike a lot of the other films in the fact that in the end there's no more spirits for the forest. That the only line of defense that the forest has now are the humans, and it's sobering compared to the kind of endings that you get in Spirited Away or Kiki's Delivery Service.
Yes.
Even Howl's Moving Castle gets dark, but it ends on a very, very light note, or a good note. And not to spoiler alert anything, but and not to mention they love Christian Bale too. Hasn't he voiced like 3 of their movies?
He's been in like 2 at least that
2?
I know of.
I know he's Howl, and he was wasn't he the prince in Mononoke?
I believe you're right. I can't remember who did the voice acting team in there. That was many, many stony years ago.
Yeah, Mononoke is definitely my favorite. I think the second one would probably have to be Howl's Moving Castle. I'd like Spirited Away, but it was.
I was a little, do it for me either.
I was a little older at the time, and it was a cute film, and there's a number of scenes that caught my attention, like the muck spirit that's actually a water spirit. That was a really great scene. And but if you asked me to go through any other scene in that movie without having to like start to remember the plot, that's really the only scene that
stands out to me too. Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene. It's beautifully drawn, and it's a beautiful part of the story where she starts to, you start to believe in the fact that if through gumption she can get through this, and the rest of the story kind of floats off of that momentum from that scene, I think.
Absolutely.
But Mononoke, there's so many twists, and it's again also the only one that has any kind of like real actual. I mean, there's war scenes in Nausicaa. There was a couple of war scenes, but they're usually flight scenes, like they're
running away from
conflict, whereas Mononoke definitely
straight up battlefield.
Yeah, they're just battles between one side that's going to lose and one side that's going to win, and you're going to have to watch it. And it's disappointing, but at the same time very foreseeable when you're watching the movies.
Also, there's a drastic difference between the Japanese version and the American version of those films. The Japanese version is a hard R.
The original ones too. I mean, nowadays, if you go and get a copy of Mononoke, if you're not getting an old copy, you're going to be getting something. I think, if I know right, I thought it's relatively more true to their whole film.
Yeah,
it was during release.
Well, because when it was originally released, it was under Miramax with Harvey Weinstein, who slaughtered those films. And now that when you can get the new Mononoke, it's no longer that theatrical cut, which was butchered. I think he almost took about 45 minutes of the film out. And changed dialogue, changed like a bunch of the plot points.
I was telling Gabe before the broadcast that after a couple of these butchering scenes, the Ghibli took this hard stance saying, that they were like not going to do any more cuts. They're not going to allow
No
any
more
cuts.
cutting.
So the president of Ghibli sent a Japanese sword to Harvey Weinstein and just had a piece of paper that said no more cuts.
No more cuts. No cut. I'd say that if I had to pick a favorite one, I would probably have to go with Porco Rosso at this point. My Neighbor Totoro is a really bizarre, really enchanting film with a lot of beauty and a lot of surreal moments of childhood and sort of this wondrous adventure of being alive. And it has just an unusual plot structure and it has an unusual ending. But I'd have to say that Porco Rosso is an unusual war film, and in that I don't believe anyone, besides in one montage, hardly anyone gets killed in the film. The film is mostly laid up of like 1940s style smoky noir catchphrases. And the main character, Porco Rosso, is absolutely enthralling and just a real treat. And there's this sequence in it, and like Robert was saying about a single sequence sort of creating meaning and creating the balance for the whole film afterwards, where it changes the meaning of the film before and everything afterwards. There's a sequence in Porco Rosso where, and Porco Rosso, I mean pig face. So there's this Italian dog fighter who is cursed to have the face of a pig, and he's a bounty hunter, and he shoots down pirates and captures booty and stuff and reclaims all sorts of stuff. And he there's a moment where he's recalling this dogfight from World War II that claimed a lot of his friends and took out a lot of people he knew. And he talks about this moment when he drifted through the clouds and he had been flying so long and so hard and he passed out, and he saw this like light to heaven where he saw these planes flying up in this ethereal, ghostly light, and they were flying forever in the trails of heaven. And it's just this shocking moment, and it's really beautiful, but it also redefines his character for the rest of the film, and it redefines what not only what you think of Porco, but what Porco's place is in the dogfighting world. Whereas before, he just sort of seemed like a selfish, individualistic character with a couple of cute lines. And then afterwards, you realized why he was so isolated and alone. It's actually a really powerful scene. One of my favorite scenes I've ever seen in an animated movie. But I'd say all of the films by Ghibli that I've ever seen have really blown me away, touched me, and moved me. Kiki's Delivery Service is at once a very cute and harmless film, but it's also a very touching film about finding your meaning and finding your purpose.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how enwrapped in the storytelling I got for such. Mm-hmm. It's not. I don't want to say it's a frivolous plot, but
it's kind of frivolous.
It's not. There's no like real big things going on.
There's no big conflict either.
No, there's no conflict.
There's almost no conflict, actually.
It's Kiki versus herself. If you haven't seen it, she's a witch, and she has to take a 1 year sabbatic, basically, where she has to be on her own, and her only skill is she can fly a broom. Yep. And then basically we kind of have what is
a wisecracking cat, but voiced by Phil Hartman, who's amazing in that role.
Is a really funny cat. And Phil Hartman, bless his soul, he was amazing in that role. He was so snide and flippant and
And his character is never resolved. No. Once he goes off onto the side and she can't speak to him anymore and she loses touch with being able to connect to her powers, it's never resolved.
Which is basically the main conflict is that she has an artist block and she's losing her powers. She doesn't know why. Obviously, Spider-Man steals that about 10 years later. And
but it's not cleanly resolved is what's nice, is that it ends on a note where she figures out that it's going to be okay, and she gets her main power back, but she doesn't have 15 scenes reconnecting with her family afterwards.
No, and then it just ends.
It just ends.
Yeah.
It just ends, and I love that. I love that it just ends.
I think that it's like 100 minutes long.
Yep.
Everything up until when she starts, it goes really fast. It goes from one scene to the next, and for a movie not really about much other than a witch and her delivery service, and it's almost like a Laverne and Shirley where it's just Kiki, and she's gonna do it, and it's kind of neat. It's just
Doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it's beautiful.
No,
it's beautiful. The animation is absolutely beautiful.
It's really simple and it's well crafted.
Yeah. So I guess that was our...
We did not talk about Ponyo.
Ponyo is a gorgeous film. I actually haven't seen Ponyo.
You haven't seen Ponyo? I just recently, I had watched it in portions, and I just recently finally saw the whole thing. And if you haven't, so the synopsis for this is that a wizard now lives under the ocean, and he's got a number of daughters that are goldfish. And Ponyo is like the biggest one, or the oldest one. And she gets trapped in a fishing trawl when they're on an outing, and ends up getting caught in a bottle, and a little boy saves her, and then he sees a goldfish. You end up seeing like kind of this floppy dress that has a kind of like a young girl's head on it, and it's all about her father trying to get her back. And then the kind of, I guess they keep calling it in the synopsis, like I didn't really catch it that way, as like the love between the two young, like the young boy and Ponyo herself, and her wanting to become human. So it kind of has this like Little Mermaid underground theme going on.
It's based on the same story.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And it's nice, it's beautiful, and it's very simple. I liked it. Later on it does become more complex. You have all these adult characters that definitely start to play more of a role. Like, unlike in Spirited Away, you have adult characters, but they kind of pass off the kids. Yeah. And whereas this one is, they're much more integral parts of the story and what is going to happen. And it's a beautiful film, and it's really well shot. Again, about imbalance, and Ponyo is a young girl, and she's got to decide which way her life is going, which is kind of odd because that's a very Japanese theme of like deciding very early where you're going to go in life. Yes. And I think that's kind of lost. Might have been lost on American audience, where that kind of pressure isn't put on people
as much.
Yeah, as much as depicted in such a young age, because they're clearly like 6-7 years old, I think, in the film, and they're young kids, and it kind of makes. That's why I didn't like when they kept calling it a love story, because I was like, well, they're kids, They're it's just I think it's more of a friendship story, but it still doesn't lose any of its weight. And if I'm not wrong, that one got a lot of acclaim when it came out. Yeah,
tons of acclaim, and it was actually the people were shocked when it wasn't nominated for best animated feature.
Well, it's a very long film to sit a child through, and it's not
true.
It's a weird age too, because you can't. I think I wouldn't be able to take like a 6 or 7 year old to it.
No,
but I think once you get to like 10, but then it's probably.
Do they have interest in the story? At that
No,
point?
I mean that's not a lot of action. It's just a lot of pretty stuff. I think you maybe have like one day when your child is 8 years old to go see that movie.
Yeah, one day of the year. Yeah, where maybe you catch them on a really adventurous day,
right.
a really thoughtful day. But yeah, for the most part, I'd say that's a 13 and up film, and even then, a gracious 13.
Oh yeah,
a thoughtful 13.
Well, yeah, there's a lot going on. And it also, that came out in
2008.
2008, which we were in full-fledged like more CGI, not hand,
And that film was a major return to animation, to full animation, because in Ghibli, to finish Princess Mononoke on time, so it didn't take forever, because before that, Miyazaki looked almost at every single frame to make sure that everything was absolutely to the specs that he wanted it. I'm talking about like Nausicaa, Porco Rosso, Kiki's Delivery Service, and a couple other films. And with that film, he just decided to let some other artists come in and take his vision when he trusted them, and let's computer filling, as he called it.
And you can see it much more in Howl's Moving Castle.
Absolutely.
Because when they showed the animation of his castle moving around and a lot of the more mechanical things, they definitely had to. I mean, just for the aesthetic, proportion-wise, it looks as though they just kind of
computer,
stopped doing.
yeah.
Yeah, it was more computer orientation, so that things, because they have a lot of action scenes in Howls where they move their camera all around,
all over it, and do a lot of mise en scène and tracking
which
shot
is
elements.
very difficult. I can imagine in animation to make it make it seem like the dimensions of whatever you're following isn't changing. Yeah, the perspective isn't changing.
Well, in Kiki's they do it, but that was what I read. One of the most complicated shots was following her when she's going through all those windows, and when they're following right behind her. It's a gorgeous shot.
Oh, it's great.
But it took forever, and
yeah, you're getting like 5 minutes out of film for like 3 months of work.
Exactly. So he decided
I'm sure
to.
Miyazaki loves that, but
He does, but Howl's Moving Castle and Mononoke were just too. They saved a lot of time, but with Ponyo, he didn't have to worry so much about those extreme aesthetics.
And it's very it's not. I want to say it's very more traditionally animated, and it's kind of nice. I mean, it's nice that only came out like 5 years ago, and a movie like that can still bring in the kind of money that it does, and people enjoy it.
He actually disbanded the CGI unit of Ghibli because he's like, we don't need this anymore. Arrietty benefits from that tremendously, and in that a lot of the backgrounds are just.
Well, I think they're just probably. I mean, if I'm guessing, if they pick the stories that they're going to tell, like you can't tell Howl's Moving Castle without. I mean, I guess you can.
That's a very actiony picture.
It is an actiony picture, and there's a lot of action in many of their Flying Fortress movies and dragon movies.
There's
and stuff
so
like that.
many that involve the word castle. They have like more movies with the name castle than any other series or any other filmmaker's collective works.
Not related to the miniseries Castle, though.
Not related to Castle.
No. Just want to say that.
No, not related.
Not at all.
Okay.
You don't watch Castle and
don't watch
expect
Castle.
anime.
Don't
just don't watch it, period.
Don't watch it.
I don't think it's on the air anymore, so you don't have to worry about it unless you got Hulu Plus and you're bored.
Well, then watch Castle. So, Ghibli, the man, Hayao Miyazaki.
Enjoy him while he's still alive.
Please do.
I think he's got like another dozen or 24 films out of him, so
maybe
he's not going anywhere.
Hopefully, I hope so. I mean, he looks old, but he's. You
should make a list on the website saying per age, because I was thinking about this today. I was like, per how old your kid is. There's definitely an order, and it's not chronological. Of when they're ready for the movie.
For which movies?
And I think that would be kind of appropriate because that's I think a great thing to raise your child with is all these movies, and to have them in an order where they're going to be receptive to the message that they're sending.
And if you raise your kids on intelligent fare and don't plop them in front of garbage. I guess they'll be more responsive to stuff like this. At least I hope they will, and they'll benefit from it. They'll be happy, and so will you.
Yeah, if you got a choice between Cars or Cars 2 and any of these films,
please pick these.
Yes,
please. At least between this and Cars 2. The first Cars is actually.
First Cars isn't bad.
It actually has some.
It's got Tater in it.
And it has some of that socially. It has a social theme of like the loss of the American dream, of the end of the American highway.
I don't think you need to burn your kids with that quite yet.
True.
I'm sure they'll have to deal firsthand with no oil. So
that's true.
Let them enjoy flying castles and and forest spirits.
Well. This has been our show. This has been my Dinner with Gabe with my co-host Robert Lang.
Hi there.
And he'll be back again in 1 month to co-host another episode of My Dinner with Gabe, and we'll let you know what that episode will be in the future. Good. In the meantime, this was us. Bye, Zav. I don't know where you are, but I hope you're having a good night. I hope you're having fun. Adios, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you.
Thanks. Later.